Hi, so I would like to talk about scapegoat trauma and feeling persecuted. So, feeling scapegoated and feeling persecuted. And so, I would like to speak about my perspective of that, and I would like to share how I feel it's benefited my life, you know, what my experiences of that and how I healed from that and how I am healing from that and how I feel it's benefited my life, which maybe sounds strange, but I like to think of things, I like to see things from a positive perspective, instead of looking at it from a victim mentality. And it doesn't mean that we're not victims, because oftentimes we are, but yeah, I like to believe that I live in a universe that wants me to do well, and instead of perceiving it from a perspective of I live in a universe that's trying to punish me, I just find it much more beneficial to think if I experience something negative, why am I experiencing that? Why is that for the greater good of my evolution, So I'd like to share my experience on that. Firstly, so that I can be heard, and secondly, because I'd like to maybe help someone else that is struggling with that. So, yeah, so my experience was that I felt scapegoated. So, also, I want to share, so my life purpose is love and unity, So I was speaking about seeing things from a positive perspective. So basically, when you come in with a life purpose, everyone has a life purpose, mine's is love and unity. And quite often, when you come in with a life purpose, you will choose to experience the opposite of that. So, yeah, so it's, which maybe sounds confusing because you think, well, why would you experience the opposite of your life purpose? But yeah, it comes from the idea of polarity, so if you look at it from a polarity from a pol if, sorry if you look at it from a polarity perspective, then it makes sense, because you think, well, if you want to know the meaning of love, then you have to experience hatred, so you can't experience light without experiencing dark, So it's like you intentionally come in to experience the opposite perspective of whatever your life purpose is, because that's the journey, is you go from, like, for example, my journey, my perspective was, well, I wanted to experience unity, so a lot of my early experiences were of feeling separate and feeling disconnected and not feeling like I fitted in, because the ultimate goal of my life is unity and oneness. So yeah, so that's the journey, is for me, is like of going from feeling really disconnected from other people to feeling at one with other people, and the same with love. So, if my ultimate goal is love, then my early experiences are going to be of feeling unloved, which is kind of where the scapegoat trauma comes in, because it's like, my early experiences were always that I felt criticized, I felt like I wasn't good enough, I always felt like the people around me, I felt like I was never good enough, no matter how hard I tried. Like everything, I I just felt like I was really wrong on a fundamental level. Like that was the message that I received. And I realize I don't like to speak from a victim perspective, and I try not to, but yeah, and that's not to dig anyone who feels like they are a victim, because oftentimes we are victims other people's mistakes, you know. So that can be true, but yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, like other people, I realize like I prefer to think of people as good, you know. I just find that to be a better way to live is to, when someone does something wrong, to think, well, what was the positive intention behind why they did that? So I always try and look at their psychology and think, well, you know, obviously they're not intentionally trying to hurt me, you know, so what was kind of the positive intention behind that? Because oftentimes, like, when people mistreat you, it's because they feel wounded in some way, so maybe by you or maybe by someone else. So oftentimes when people hurt you, if you look at how you feel, you know, there's a kind of subtle message in that. If you look at how did this person make me feel when they behaved badly, and if you can determine how they made you feel, like, say, for example, they made fun of you or they made you feel excluded in some way, then, you know, on a subtle level, they're probably trying to tell you that you made them feel that way or other people made them feel that way, you know. So yeah, so I just find that to be a better perspective to kind of see people through, you know. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, what was I saying? So I always felt like I was a problem in some way, and that was my early experiences. So yeah, so from a law of attraction perspective, you attract what you are, or you attract what you believe about yourself. So I always believed that my setup was, you know, I kind of, whatever happened in my childhood, I made that mean that I was a problem and there was something wrong with me, you know. So because that created this belief like in my mind, then that was what I attracted from other people around me. So yeah, so I attracted people that didn't want to take responsibility for their stuff, that always wanted to make me into the problem, you know. So whether that was actually true or whether it was just my perception, you know, it didn't really matter, because I believed, or because I made that mean I was a problem, you know, it literally became my reality that I attracted people that made me feel like I was a problem in some way, you know. So it's like, yeah, it literally became my experience. And yeah, it just kind of exacerbated it in my mind. And yeah, it got to the point where this belief that I was a problem and that there was something wrong with me, it got worse. And yeah, like, it completely eroded my self-esteem and my sense of self-worth. And it got to the point where a few years ago, it was so bad that I wanted to take my own life. Like, I wanted to jump off of a bridge, because I felt like I was that much of a problem that the world would be a better place without me in it. And if you've never experienced feeling suicidal or feeling depressed, like, maybe that sounds like, it sounds quite melodramatic, you know, and it does when I say it, like, because obviously I'm not in that place now, but that was what I genuinely believed in my mind at the time. So yeah, like, yeah, I literally believed. And you know, quite often people think, well, you know, quite often people say about suicidal people, you know, well, it's a selfish act, and you know, do you not consider how your family would feel or how your friends would feel if you took your own life? And you know, it in my mind I wasn't being selfish because, you know, in my mind I was actually, it was in my mind it was actually an act of love. You know, that was how messed up my belief about myself was it was actually, I actually felt like I was doing people a favor. I actually felt like I was doing the world a favor because that was how that was how negatively I viewed myself. And like I felt like I had nothing to give or contribute to anyone, and I felt like I hurt people. And no matter how hard I tried to change, you know, I felt like I tried to change, and people were always critical of me, people were always judgmental of me, and I felt like literally, yeah, I had nothing to contribute to the world or to other people's lives, you know. So yeah, so kind of, I know it sounds melodramatic, but kind of stop and consider that for a moment, like how bad you would have to feel about yourself to have that perspective, you know. So that was my perspective at the time when I felt that. Yeah, basically. Anyway, so I took some notes. So yeah, I'd like to speak about how did I heal from that. So that was my perspective. How did I heal from it? So first off, I had to ask myself if I was really a problem. So I had to really look at my experience, and I had to look at what other people had said or what other people had did. And I had to also look at what things that, you know, my own behavior. I had to really analyze my own behavior, and I had to look at the facts of that. So yeah, so I had to ask myself, like, so where are the things that other people I had to look at the things that other people had said about me, and I had to ask myself, were those things true 100% of the time, you know. Of course they weren't, you know. So I had to, yeah, so basically I had to realize that when someone else criticizes me, you know, that is actually saying more about them than it is about me. And although there may be things that I do wrong, you know, it's, yeah, like the majority of the time, if someone's being critical or if someone's being negative, it does actually say more about them than it does about you, you know. So, you know, you can take responsibility, you know. You can look and think, well, did I do something wrong? But if not, you know, don't make it personal, you know, don't internalize it, you know, if that makes sense. Like, for example, if someone is saying to you, like, I don't know, like, I don't think that you are worthy of love, you know, don't internalize that and believe that about yourself, you know. Like, but yeah, you can look and think, well, so don't take it literally, but you can take it with you can take it from a perspective of, why did I attract this? Well, maybe I feel like I don't deserve love. So yeah, so in that case you would affirm to yourself that you do deserve love, you know. So you're not taking on board what the person says about you to be true, you know. It's their problem, not yours. But you can still look and think, well, how did I attract this, you know. So that's the responsibility you can take, you know, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I had to look at things that people had said and I had to find, what is the truth in that? Is it what I'm making it mean? No. You know, most of the time it's not true. It doesn't mean that it can't be beneficial to me in some way, but I don't need to internalize every critical comment that someone says about me as being true and being something that I need to change. You know, that's not the reality, you know. But yeah, it can still benefit me because I can affirm to myself that I can look at it from a more positive perspective. So I can affirm to myself, if someone's being negative, I affirm to myself what is the positive perspective. So so yeah, the majority of the time it's common psychology that people try and make their problems your fault, you know, because they want to avoid looking at something in themselves, you know. So most of the time it has nothing to do with you. What else? There was something else I wrote about that. Yeah, so another thing that I asked myself when trying to determine if I was a problem was I had to ask myself the question, you know, this was a big one, was when I tried to change, did it actually fix anything? You know, so when other people are saying, you know, oh, I think you need to change this about yourself, or, you know, you need to stop doing this, or you need to start doing this, when people are just generally being critical. So times when I tried to make an effort to change, did that fix anything? Did it make them happier in any way? You know, and the reality was it didn't. You know? So yeah, so that was surprising when I looked at that, because I thought, well, if I'm making an effort, hang on, you know, if I'm making an effort to change and this isn't actually making the other person any happier, and they're still finding fault with me, you know, and it's like where, you know, where you feel like you're stuck in this endless cycle where it's like, oh, you change this, now there's something else that's wrong, and now there's something else that's wrong, and now there's something else that's wrong. Fix it, fix it, fix it, you know. And it's like where you feel like you're stuck in this endless loop where you keep fixing things and then there's another problem, you know, and it's always something wrong with you. You know, when you feel like you're stuck in that kind of loop, you know, generally, yeah, it means that you're not the problem. So yeah, that made sense to me, because it's like, well, if I'm fixing things and this person is still miserable and they're still critical of me and they're still negative, then it's it's obviously not me that's the problem, you know. It's obviously them that has the problem, you know, because there would be, you know, that was evidence for me, because there would be some kind of improvement, you know. If there's no improvement and they're still being negative about me, then that's a message to me, like that's a clear message that there's not there's not actually anything wrong with you. There's something wrong with them, like they're just being generally really negative. Yeah, so what else? So the second thing I had to ask myself was, yeah, what would I say to myself if I was another person? So if that was my friend who felt that low about herself, where she felt like she wanted to jump off a bridge because she felt like she had nothing to give, she felt like she was always a problem, you know, what if that was what if that was a friend that was telling me that, and that was what she believed, you know, what would I tell her? So yeah, so I would tell her, obviously, that she was special, you know, that she had gifts to contribute to the world. And also I would tell her, you know, I would build her up instead of tearing her down, you know. And yeah, so that's what I had to do, was I had to tell myself the opposite, the positive, the I had to tell myself the positive opposite to the negative things that I had believed about myself, you know. So yeah, if I felt like I was worthless, I had to tell myself that I was worthy, that I had gifts to contribute to the world, that yeah, that I wasn't always the problem, you know. And I had to love myself as I am, basically. And also, like, yeah, like I had to tell myself that, I didn't have to take responsibility for everything all the time, because it's not, although you can take responsibility if, you genuinely feel you're at fault. If you feel like you're always apologizing and you're always being made to be the problem, you don't have to take responsibility for everything, because basically other people fuck up too. It's not always my fault. So, yeah, and also, like, other people can criticize you to avoid looking at their own issues, like out of jealousy or spite, so there's lots of reasons why people would be critical of you. It doesn't always mean that you've done something wrong, you know. So yeah, like, I had to build myself up by telling myself all the positive things that were the opposite of what I believed. So basically, there was nowhere else to go. Like, I felt that low about myself that there was nowhere else to go but to believe in myself. And yeah, so I had to stop taking responsibility for things that were not my fault. So yeah, I'd like to touch on that as well, because quite often people that have had the experience of scapegoat trauma, like, we can feel actually quite nervous about, like, we want to take responsibility for everything, and we can feel quite nervous about not taking responsibility for things, because basically because we've experienced firsthand the consequence of other people's avoidance, so yeah, so that's my fear, is if I don't take responsibility, then I'm going to be making someone else feel the way that I've been made to feel. Like, yeah, like, by not taking responsibility, I'm setting up someone else up to be a scapegoat, almost, because I'm saying that it's their fault, because that's what I felt like was my experience my whole life, was other people avoided their own issues by making it my fault, so I take more than my fair share of the responsibility, and I'm always frightened not to, because I don't ever want to make anyone else experience what I experienced, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that properly. Yeah, so quite often, you can think, well, isn't that quite a selfish or narcissistic viewpoint? But it's like, well, no, because I will always take more than my fair share of the responsibility, but I don't have to take responsibility for everything, because it's not always my fault, so stop taking responsibility for things that aren't my fault. I also had to view myself from the perspective that I was whole and complete exactly as I was. That was a big one for me too, because where else can you go when you come from a perspective of feeling that you're so horrible that you're going to rid the world of yourself? Where else do you have to go but to view yourself as whole and complete, just as you are? So yeah, so I'm worthy of love just as I am, and I'm not a problem. I had to affirm to myself that I wasn't a problem, and that I was worthy of love, being loved just as I was, including my faults. And I feel that that's a gift that I have to give to other people as well, because if I love and accept myself as I am, then I have to love and accept other people exactly as they are. So that's my gift to other people, and it's my challenge now to love myself as I am, and also to love other people as they are, and to not be in a victim perspective, where I'm thinking, well, I wish they had behaved differently, or I wish they had behaved better. or thinking that there's something wrong with them or something that needs to change. You know, maybe there is, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. You know, they're still a human being, they're still capable, they're still worthy of being loved. You know, they're still worthy of my love and my respect. You know, they're capable of, they're deserving of love just as they are, you know. So that's what I believe about myself, and that's what I believe about other people. Yeah, so my challenge is to love myself and the world just as it is, without feeling the need to change it in some way or to change myself to fit in. So to be authentic and to show my authentic expression to the world, like to have a voice, to know that there's something valuable in me that I have to share with other people, you know, like, that I'm not just a waste of space. Yeah, and that brings us back to the love and unity perspective, because it's like I'm loving myself and other people, and I'm seeing myself as the same as other people, with the same flaws and the same mistakes, and I'm no better, and I'm no better and I'm no worse, you know. So it helps me to feel connected to other people, basically. So yeah, gifts. What are the gifts? How has this benefited my life in a positive way? So yeah, I've touched on this before, but it means that I know how to take responsibility and not be a victim. So that's a big one, you know, because yeah, it enables me to have a more positive perspective in life, and yeah, I will always take responsibility for things that I do wrong, you know. Which also brings me on to the next point, because yeah, another benefit to that, for myself, or if you've experienced this, you know, it can mean that, you know, you're good in positions such as business or organizing big projects or being a leader in some kind of way, basically because of the responsibility factor, because you know and are willing to take on a larger percentage of responsibility than the majority of people, you know. So you're happy to carry it, so you're happy to carry a bigger burden on your shoulders than the majority of people would feel. So the majority of people maybe wouldn't feel comfortable with having that much responsibility, you know. But because if that's your experience of being scapegoated, then you're used to taking responsibility for things, you know. So yeah, so you'll take on the responsibility even if it's not entirely your fault, you know. So yeah, so you'd be good in leadership positions or business or organizing big projects. Also, it means that you know how to handle more than your fair share of criticism. So yeah, like for example, people who are in the public eye and they're subject to more scrutiny than normal, or social media, for example, you know. So it means that, yeah, it means that you can put yourself out there and you're not afraid to speak your truth, because you're used to being criticized, and you know, you've learned how to not internalize that, you know. And you know that it's not about you, you know that it's about other people and not about you, you know. For example, if someone makes a negative comment about you on social media, you know, so yeah, you're capable of being in the public eye, or maybe being in a position where you're in the public eye, or a position where you're like, you know, you're where other people are scrutinizing you to a greater degree than normal, you know. So without taking that too personally, you know. So So that's a gift as well, because a lot of people can struggle with criticism. So yeah, so I realised this video was probably too long. I didn't mean it to be this long. If you watched to the end, then thank you. Yeah, even if no one watches it, that's okay. I just wanted to share and to put it out there because it felt good to me. So I hope it helped someone. Even if it just helped one person, then that would be good. So thank you for watching if you watched.